and we sing above. Oh, Papa God, we sing above. Well, hello, me again. I know it's been quite a long time since I did anything. There's a reason for that. But I'm going to start a new series. Back in 2012, I started posting, and I guess I went to about, I kept going at intervals, but for about 4 years I was really putting out some didactic stuff, prophetic stuff. It was somewhat esoteric by most standards, and so and definitely Christocentric. And what happened was, at that time, if you had a successful channel going already, even if it was Christocentric, they wouldn't react to you, and the algorithms wouldn't shut you down or push you in a corner. But if you were starting out and you didn't flash in the pan, they would begin to trim you back and push you in a corner. And I'm grateful for X, formerly Twitter. I believe they're going to be above board on that kind of thing and not suppress people. I certainly hope it keeps its integrity. Anyway, the other platforms have been tyrannical, really, in many ways, most of them. And it's, grievous to see, the sanctimonious cancelizations and, the canceling of people and the censoring of people, just amazing tyranny in the social medias. And then you've got your search engines that are, God knows some of the stuff they're up to. And it's amazing. But so I wanted to get back here and start a new series. I hope everything is warmer where you are. We're kind of snowed in here. A little bit of ice out there. Not worth traveling for a few days here with the black ice and whatnot here in Nashville area. But I wanted to get back on track. Now, I'm going to start this series, and the series will mainly be about spiritual warfare, what that really means, as opposed to what the churches talk about. Not that that's completely negated. What I mean is there's kind of a subcultural sequestering of a lot of the terminology and function and misconceptions about a lot of it too. Big misconceptions. And that's some of what I'll address. Let me start by saying that I watch a lot of these channels, and the guys and gals that are running them, the ones that are objective in the secular market, like Joe Rogan, right? You gotta love Joe. And, people like that, Sean Ryan and those kind of guys. And there's a bunch of them out there now. I mean, good ones, really good ones. But when you hear these guys and you see their objectivity, it makes my heart ache, really, honestly, because for a lot of reasons, I have answers, and I know how arrogant that sounds. Please wink at it and hear me out. It's not in style anymore. It's not in vogue, hasn't been for years, to have answers. If you have answers to why you're here on the planet And if you have answers about demons and angels and the spiritual realm where it meets the natural realm and maybe even where they cross over, right? If you have those kind of answers, I mean, literally, you're arrogant. You're going to be interpreted as arrogant and puffed up, condescending, sanctimonious, and the list goes on. So I'm willing to take the heat and the misinterpretation from folks, because I've battled everything from imps to principalities. For those that know what that means, I know that sounds arrogant too, but this is not about having a big deal channel or a big deal ministry or a big deal identity at all, period. I've tried to live in obscurity. I left the mainstream media many years ago. And by that I mean back when, I helped pioneer what is called CCM. I was there with Keith, the whole thing that happened in California with Keith Green and Last Days Ministries, Maranatha when it started out, meaning all of those, all of the Christian, contemporary Christian artists of the Jesus Revolution. I was in the vortex of that and saw miracles of biblical proportion. I wrote a book about it. I wouldn't share some of the things I saw for 50 years unless I was in the right situation, because I didn't want to end up in a padded cell. And I've shared that many times. I'll probably share it again. Deal with it. I saw miracles of biblical proportion my whole life. I'm still having miracles and supernatural experiences. I still deliver people, still cast out demons and deal with strongholds in the second heaven and all of that. And as crazy as that sounds, and trust me, I know how crazy it sounds. I'm a very rational man. I've done a great deal of research in many different directions in my life, so I know how nutty that sounds. But it's just part of my calling. I can't help it. And my life, quite frankly, I'm summarizing as I start this series. And a lot of folks don't know who I am, and I understand, and because I have lived in obscurity and I was called to it. I left the Christian media with my career in music. I'm a recording artist by trade and calling, part of my calling. The Christian media didn't take very long for it to begin to fashion itself in the image of the secular labels and to compete with them or try to mimic them or however you want to say it. But it became inordinately commercial. And we've come so far in that degeneration that one of the guys I used to do TV with many years ago, is a man named Mario Murillo. Many of you know who that is. I did some TV with him, and nowadays I really like what he said. Recently, he said, "Yeah, we've degenerated," meaning the churches. Many of the churches have degenerated to big screens, skinny jeans, and fog machines. You got to love that. And Mario reminds me of like the Christocentric rendition of Joe Rogan. He's very frank. He's not going to play. And I like that. I was raised on that spiritually. My first major ministry outing was with David Wilkerson and his outfit. And he was, talk about no compromise. And then, of course, Keith Green, everybody knows what Keith was like. He was up in everybody's grill, as they say, and telling the truth, and if you were a pastor that was playing games, he'd expose you, Well, I've been doing that since dirt, and consequently, I don't win any popularity contests with leadership. But what's new, right? But all that to say, everything's changing now. You need to realize where we are, all right? Everything's changing. We're in a polarization, both in the church and in the world. It should be common knowledge among all believers, both nominal and vital, that whatever's going on in the spirit realm reflects or begins to manifest in similar form in the physical world here on terra firma. And so what's happening now is a polarization. If you are given to worshiping the ministry of the Lord rather than the Lord of the ministry, that's what you'll have. If you're a member of churchianity, as opposed to a broken, contrite, God-fearing, servant-hearted shepherd, you'll have that and the rewards that come with that. And anyway, so he's separating the sheep from the goats, in other words. And something that I would have you consider and look at very closely is the fact that in the parable of the tares and the wheat and the tares are harvested first. What's that look like? Okay, so, and everybody that reads that scripture that says, two will be in the field, one will be taken, one will be left, two will be grinding at, grinding wheel back in those days. And one will be taken, one will be left. Well, everybody assumes that's referring to the rapture. What if it's referring to the tares being removed? How about that? And most people, for example, I'll give you a little hint of where I'm headed with stuff like this. And this is just one little example of how unique the new wineskin will be in America, especially. What we will call, and when it fully arrives, what we call the new wineskin. Everybody's saying, oh, yeah, this is part of the new wineskin. No, we haven't seen that yet. That comes with the powers of the age to come. But so as this stuff approaches, we're going to see all manner of polarization taking place. And here's that hint. Did you ever notice, well, let me put it this way. When you discuss the Great Tribulation with most people, they'll say, well, we're not going to be here anyway. Most Christians, it'll blow your mind. Most Christians are, in fact, pre-tribulation believers. They believe that we're going to be snatched out of here and we won't experience any of the tribulation, what they call the time of Jacob's trouble. The truth is, here's a hint, and it's a big one. When you have that discussion or debate with other believers, and they're very animately pre-trib, they'll say, well, we're children not appointed unto wrath. Well, that's true. Very true. But they never think it through, and they don't do enough homework analytically to define their terms, and get the actual backdrop and context. Because the reason I'm saying that is because if we're children not appointed unto wrath, then we will be here until deep into the tribulation, what they associate as the tribulation, as deep as chapter 16. Because the only time you see the wrath of God, coming in the book of Revelation, which is about all of that, is in chapter 16. The bowls are the wrath of God. He's holding that in reserve until that late in the tribulation. Did you ever notice that? See, the judgments that come with the seals and the trumpets, the angels and all that stuff that's released on the earth, that is not God's wrath, that's God's judgments. And the judgments, he's so loving, he's so crazy about you and trying to reach you any way he can, that the judgments that and plagues, all that stuff that's coming on the earth is like a good spanking to wake you up, to do whatever he can, to save you from walking off the cliff like a bunch of lemmings, right? If you got a child that's standing on the curb with you and is about to step off into traffic in front of a garbage truck that's speeding, you'll grab that child by the arm and yank it up in the air, dislocate or break its little arm if you have to. If your child's about to die like that, you're going to do that. I mean, it's just going to be automatic. Or by the hair, grab me, whatever you got to do. And it's not going to be pleasant for the child, but they'll live. And that's the point. The judgments that are coming on the earth in the book of Revelation are not the wrath of God. The wrath of God doesn't show up until the bowls are poured out. Look it up. The bowls are called the bowls with the wrath of God in them, straight up. So what were we thinking? How come we never noticed that? How come nobody ever thought that through? Right? I'm sure somebody has, but nobody's talking about it because nobody wants to step on anybody's sacred cow. You need to get objective, people. You need to stop trying to be right and be truthful. This is not about saving face. This is not about competing to sound like you know what you're talking about. None of us have anything we haven't received. We're little created beings without God. I always go here, and I'm going to do it. We're like Buzz Lightyear, right? I alone can change the world and save their, we're all puffed up like we're going to do something important, right? And we don't realize we're little created beings, right? You take the biggest, baddest, 450-pound muscle man on earth, the strongest, baddest, most agile warrior on the planet, right? And put him in a loincloth with a spear and put him on the savannah in Africa. You know what he is? He's dinner. He's done. And we're like that. We think we're like Buzz Lightyear, and then life has a way of knocking the tar out of us and humbling us if we're listening. I mean, most people, are so, especially guys, are so macho, it's all about that. And it's asinine. I mean, because in the long run, I mean, when I was a kid, I was a violent, macho idiot. And I went to my 20-year reunion, high school reunion, and saw a friend that I really liked him a lot. Him, and I do like him still. Him and his family, and he was walking towards me, and he was bounding. He had a crease in his brow. I said, "Hey, Paul, how are you, man? It's been years." I said, "I never told you. I just dove right in. But I really liked you, and your family was wonderful." And he kind of it's like I slapped him. He goes, "I thought you were And I started laughing. I think he was looking to fight, settle a score or something I didn't even know about. That's what kind of a jerk I was in high school. I started laughing when he said that. He goes, "What's funny about that?" I said, "I wasn't." I wasn't worth the powder. Like they used to say in the Revolutionary War, I wasn't worth the powder to blow me to hell, right? I was no good. But, the Lord showed up, and if he can redeem me and change me, he can change anybody. I was quite a project. It took my whole life. But I'm sharing all this because we're coming up on the end of all things, folks. All the prophecies, even the unbelievers are saying, wow, this thing was wrapping up quick. I can tell because all that crazy stuff that Christians are talking about is happening. What do we do? What do we do? Well, if you've heard the gospel at all, you know what to do. It says, whosoever shall call upon the name of the Lord shall be saved. That's what it says. It's that simple. Does this thing work? Christianity real? I've dealt with everything from imps to principalities, like I said. I've asked the Lord at times to open the doors, and I ended up reaching the whole nation, hundreds of millions of people for a decade straight, at least. And I walked away from the ministry at one point because it was still about me, and I was mad at God, did the Lieutenant Dan thing. You call this a storm? He wasn't doing my plan. But, and then my whole life was trauma upon trauma in my youth. I won't go into all that. But then I went to Vietnam, and are we having fun yet? And a good portion of my duty over there was it was okay because we were doing a clandestine thing in an adjacent nation, we'll say that. And but and then some of the guys would go upriver. So I can say that much probably. Out of respect for my nation, I still keep the button down on some of that stuff. But the point is, I've seen a lot in my life. You just wouldn't believe it. And I wrote a book, like I said, if you get a chance, it's called When Heaven Speaks Out Loud. If you want to know what the real Jesus revolution was like, the authentic thing, not some narrative built around celebrities, and hear about those miracles that actually came with that outpouring. And I mean, it was played down. They couldn't play it too far down. It was so big, but it was even bigger than that. It was like first century stuff, right in the street. Deliverances, miracles. I've seen 2 people come back from the dead. I've cast out many demons, and I know that sounds heady, because there's some people going to approach the Lord at the end of time talking about the miracles they did, blah, 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 big puffed up bunch of crap. Well, I'm not doing that. I'm sharing the truth. The Lord said, that these signs shall follow them that believe. Right? What signs? Well, they'll, cast out demons, speak new tongues, they'll lay hands on the sick, they shall recover, that kind of thing, And when he sent them out, they came back going, Lord, he gave the body, the believers, he gave them authority. And when they came back, they said, Lord, even the spirits are subject to us, meaning coming out. They were casting out demons and healing folks and stuff. And he said, don't get hung up on that. Talk about paraphrase. He said, he played that down. He said, don't marvel that the spirits are subject to you, but rather rejoice that your name is written in the Lamb's Book of Life. And what he was saying is, yeah, that's good, but that's not what this is about. What it's about is you and I. And this was just like a re-entry into the social media. And, I just want you to know, I really do have answers, right? And I know how arrogant that sounds, but he is the answer. Generally, there's no greater answer to all of the problems of life than the Lord Jesus Christ. He's crazy about you. He wants to have intimacy with you. He wants to come into your life. He says, behold, I stand at the door and knock. If anyone opens up to me, I will come into him and sup with him, my Father and I. So that word sup in the ancient language is an intimate family scenario. It's like not just having one meal, but he's saying, I'll come and we will be family. I will adopt you. And he says, whosoever shall call upon the name of the Lord shall be saved, right? So he's looking for an excuse to bless you, to love on you, to change things, bring the peace and the purpose, the joy, and the healing and deliverance that everybody's looking for, whether they're looking for it in drugs or alcohol or sex, and all of the fame and wealth of this world. They're all looking for him. Everybody's looking for him, and they can't connect the dots because they're so myopic and carnal in the way they think. So I'm going to wrap this up, and I'm asking you to consider what I've said. Now, again, I skimmed. This was a bit scattershot, covering a whole bunch of stuff all at once, to kind of give an idea of the direction I'm going to go. But it's even more peripheral than that, because I also spent many years in apologetics, archaeology, astronomy, not astrology, that's occult. Astronomy, say what you want about the wise men, the Bible says they were wise. Well, how come? Well, they were astronomers. How did they know that the Lord, God Almighty, was coming and taking on flesh and going to live among men? So the three wise men did a perilous journey. I mean, you wouldn't believe what they went through to get to Jerusalem. They were from the Far East. So these astronomers bumped their data against the Hebrew calendar and realized who they were dealing with. And anyway, that could be a rabbit trail right about now. But it gives you an idea how all the different fields of science point straight at the life, death, and resurrection of Jesus Christ. Even some of the esoteric prophets know that. All of that to say I'm back. Remember Steven Tyler? I'm back, and I'm going to be sharing a great deal of information, spiritual warfare on a scale that will blow your mind. I've written another book about spiritual warfare, mostly, not entirely, called Restoration. That is the first book I wrote. Restoration, Preparing for His Fullness is the subtitle. Preparing for His Fullness. Think of that for a moment. What would that look like? Well, we get some hints, when the personal articles of the apostles, just having touched things, still had the residual anointing of the presence of the Lord for healing and deliverance and such. Miracle. And I'll wrap it up with this. People ask me, they read my book, When Heaven Speaks Out Loud, and they're astonished. They just say, well, wait a minute. This in the modern world, those kinds of miracles, are you kidding? And they'll say, listen, I've been doing church for 40 years, did it all, jumped through all the hoops, faithful to the hilt, did it all, and never even had a prophetic dream, much less a miracle. What am I doing wrong? And I asked them, when's the last time you spent, I asked 3 questions, 2 were rhetorical to set up the final question. I said, when's the last time you spent 3 hours praying in the Spirit? And then before they could answer, I said, when's the last time you spent 2 hours praying in the Spirit? When's the last time you spent 1 hour praying in the Spirit, praying in tongues? That's all you did, right? And they thought about it and said, I've never done that. And imagine that. 40 years in the church and you never did the basics, and it's right there in the instruction manual? Hello? He's after intimacy, not churchianity, right? Anyway, I said, well, do that, do that hour alone with him, praying in the Spirit every day, and get back to me. And within 2 days, this happened 4 times, and they said the exact same thing, and I said the exact same thing, different people, and the exact same thing happened. Within 2 days, in all 4 cases, they called ranting. You're not going to believe what just happened. They had their breakthrough. They had a supernatural miracle, miraculous thing happen in their lives. And so this thing works. It's just nobody ever puts it to the test. And I don't mean the way it sounds. Nobody does the basics. I mean, truly does them, diligently does them, seeks God until they break through. And so this is real. He loves you. That's the bottom line. He came down, took all of the sins of the world, and went as the final sacrifice. You look around the world, there's always been blood sacrifice everywhere. That's because Satan and his minions mimic what God does, right? And it started in the garden when they had sinned. They found out they were naked. They didn't even realize that prior. They were like children. And Satan tricked them, and from then on they could see crooked. They were seeing from a poison tree. And I can get into that. I'll share that stuff later. But they knew they were naked, and the Lord made tunics for them to wear out of skin. Well, in order to have a skin tunic, something had to die. There's your first blood sacrifice right there. So from then on, all of the cultures, even isolated cultures, the demons would mimic what God did, right? And they wanted to be worshipped. So before too long, they'd scare people so badly that pretty soon they were sacrificing their kids. Go figure. And these are cultures that were isolated. They didn't learn it from the other cultures. It was demonic. The spirits of the fallen ones went out and began to propagate this stuff all over the world. Now, that gives you another hint of where I'm headed. There's a lot to cover. I'm going to be covering a lot of stuff. But there are answers. He's crazy about you. He just wants you. People say, well, what does he want with me anyway? Here's a little word for you, Joe. Joe Rogan. Love you, man. Here's a little word for you. You say, well, what does he want with me anyway? He just wants you, Joe. He just loves you, man. Beyond your wildest dreams. And this is real, dude. This is real. By the way, back in the day, I started studying Muay Thai in Thailand in 1971. Got a kick out of it. I'm sorry for the corny jokes, but he loves you, Joe. He loves all of you out there. He's crazy about us, and he's just trying to find any way he can to get to you. And so I'm here, and I'm back. And I'm going to be sharing a lot of stuff. God bless you and keep you. And I pray that you will receive the spirit of wisdom and revelation and the knowledge of Jesus Christ, as Paul put it, with the spirit of conviction of sin and wisdom and revelation of him, which is what this is about. And to be continued. God bless you all. All this love they are refusing has them choosing